For a long time, I told myself it wasn't worth mentioning. It wasn't dangerous, just persistent, like a bad thought that wouldn't fade, waiting for the smallest sound to bring it back. 8 months of silence have done nothing to soften it. A door that won't stay closed, a light that flickers too long, the faint sense that someone's standing just out of sight, close enough to notice, never close enough to prove. It began last March, when I moved into a terraced house in Exeter that had been divided into flats sometime in the 70s. Mine was the ground floor, compact, quiet, self-contained. After 6 months sleeping in my sister's spare room in Plymouth, it felt like I'd finally earned back a bit of normality. I'm a copy editor, so I spend most of my time at home. All I wanted was somewhere small and steady. A living room with decent light for work, a bedroom that fit the essentials, a kitchen that was tired but honest, and a bathroom painted in that old avocado green you only ever see in houses that have forgotten to change. The landlord, Graham, was an older bloke who owned a handful of places around the city. He didn't pry. He wanted to know I had work and a deposit. He mentioned the last tenant had left suddenly for a job up north. I nodded and didn't ask. People move. The rent wasn't ridiculous. The high street was a short walk, and I signed that afternoon. The first stretch was plain and clean. False calm. I unpacked, set my desk where the light fell best, got the Wi-Fi sorted, aired the place out. Empty flats have a particular smell. Paper, dust, something stale sunk into carpets. And I scrubbed until it faded. By the end of the week, it felt like mine. I don't need much. A second-hand sofa from a charity shop that turned out to be surprisingly forgiving. My books, a lamp with a warm shade, a kettle that boils quickly. The living room wallpaper had that raised texture that was probably trendy for 5 minutes 40 years ago. I didn't love it, but I didn't need to. The gas fire worked. Evenings were still cold. 3 weeks in, while finishing a manuscript close to 11, I heard a sound from the kitchen, a short scrape, like china shifting across a counter. I assumed I'd left the window on the latch and the breeze had nudged something. I stood, walked through, and found the window shut, the counter clear. The sink smelled faintly of bleach from the morning's clean. My mug was there, but on the other side of the draining board from where I remembered it. A tiny, nagging misalignment. I went back to my desk, told myself I was tired, and tried to forget it. Over the next few days, the flat developed a personality, mild, forgetful, slightly contrary. A desk chair turned a few degrees left. A book returned to the wrong shelf. The tap stuttering to a drip that I could have sworn I'd tightened. Each thing had a fix and a reason. I gave the tap a new washer, lined the chair legs with felt pads, promised myself I'd pay more attention when shelving. Then I came in from the bathroom and found every single book turned around on the shelves. Not shifted, not pulled out, just rotated so the spines faced the back, and the shelves presented only pale paper edges to the room. The arrangement was flawless, fastidious. It looked like a deliberate insult to sense. I stood in the doorway and listened to the quiet of the flat. Radiator ticking down, the faint outside murmur through old windows, and waited for an explanation to arrive. It didn't. I turned each book back one by one, hands careful, heartbeat quick. I checked the windows and doors, all locked. No one else had a key. When I cooked later, I kept glancing at the shelves, as if the paper edges might swivel back when my head turned away. They didn't. I tried to file it with the mug and the tap and the chair, but it wouldn't sit neatly with them. It lodged. The weekend behaved. Saturday, I met a friend in town. came back to attack a pile of admin I'd been avoiding. Sunday was rain and roast chicken, and a tidy satisfaction that carries you into bed earlier than usual. Calm returned. I slept easily. On Monday, I woke up to breath blooming in the air like white ink in water. Proper cold, the sort that slides into joints and settles. The thermostat read 8 degrees. I walked the flat in socks, breath trailing me, and touched a radiator that was hot enough to sting. The boiler hummed in the cupboard, steady and correct. The readings made no sense with the cold in my skin. I brewed coffee with my hands around the mug like a heat source, and the temperature climbed on its own towards 9 o'clock. By midday, the chill had burned off. When I rang Graham, he sounded relaxed and promised to send a bloke to take a look. The engineer came 2 days later. 20 minutes of neat movements and a polite shrug. Nothing wrong with the boiler. Nothing wrong with the rads. Old buildings, drafts, uneven heat. He wasn't unkind, just firm in his assessment. After he left, the flat felt bigger and slightly foolish, like I'd gone to A&E with a headache and been told to drink water. But the cold had been real. Tension began to stick. I started noticing the upstairs footsteps at the wrong times. The nurse above me worked long shifts, and the routine of her life was a soft soundtrack I'd learned without meaning to. Early alarm on some mornings, television murmuring on others, Hoover across the floor every so often. I knew the sound of her car on the street, but sometimes the ceiling carried heavy, steady footfalls in the small hours, crossing the flat from front to back and back again with a metronome's patience. At times, when her parking space was empty and the street outside sat damp and quiet. Pipes don't pace. Buildings don't practice walking. I almost asked her about it once when we passed at the front door, with my hand halfway up in a half wave and a question forming. But I heard myself in my head and let it go. I said good morning instead. The kitchen developed a habit that felt like theatre. I woke to find every cupboard hanging open, top and bottom the lot, as if someone had moved through systematically and left each door in the same impossible position. The back door was locked, the window latched, nothing missing, nothing rummaged. I took to closing each cupboard at night with a calm, deliberate press and a childish extra push, like tucking in a child. It made no difference. After a week, I left them as they wanted to be. I had the sense of playing a game I didn't agree to play. Work slipped. I'd open a manuscript and find the meaning of sentences dissolving mid-paragraph while I listened for something that might happen. My concentration frayed into listening. My sister rang one evening in early May. I must have sounded oddly hollow because she asked, more than once, whether I was sleeping, whether I needed to come down for a few days. I thought about the cupboards and the cold and the books and said I was fine, overworked, and promised to visit soon. The moment to tell her came and went, and I let it pass because pinning the events to words felt like giving them permission to stand up. That weekend, a boundary shifted. I woke on Saturday to find my bedroom door wide open. I always slept with it closed. I like contained rooms, predictable shapes in the dark. The open doorway showed a slice of hall and a sliver of living room wall, and something inside me tightened. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was the clean, unmistakable sense that a rule had been broken. I shut the door, felt the latch catch, and spent the day pretending the rule still held. That night, I wedged a trainer against the bottom edge before getting into bed. Not because I believed it would stop anything, because I needed the theatre of doing something. I stared at the door until my eyes hurt. I fell asleep near 3. The door was still closed in the morning. The trainer was still in place. Relief and foolishness arrived together. On Sunday, the door was open again when I woke up. The trainer lay in the hall a meter away, not kicked, not shuffled, but tossed, as if picked up between finger and thumb and flicked. The hall was dark, a soft dark, and I couldn't see into the living room from the bed. My mouth went dry. I stood, switched on every light in sequence, and searched the flat, cupboards, under the bed, behind the sofa, knowing it was useless and doing it anyway. Nothing. Emptiness presented itself like evidence. I didn't sleep that night. The flat's noises, pipes clicking as they cooled, the fridge's soft motor, a gentle joint in the floorboards above, became sharp and itemized. Each sound felt like a presence testing the shape of the room. On Monday, I was grey with exhaustion and called off a Zoom with a publisher. I said I was unwell. I made strong coffee that did nothing and sat at my desk, cursor blinking on paragraphs I didn't recognize. I thought about packing. The sensible part of me proposed it clearly. Pack, ring Graham, say you need to break the lease, go back to your sisters for a bit. The other part of me, persistent now, said I'd been chosen for a game and running wouldn't end it. It sounded like fear pretending to be logic, but it was convincing. The bathroom incident fixed my thinking. Thursday at 7, routine in place, shower, teeth, the rhythm of a regular morning. While brushing, I caught motion in the mirror. A shadow crossed behind me from left to right in a smooth, unhurried pass. I turned so fast the toothbrush clicked against my teeth. The doorway was empty. I looked back at the mirror. My own face looked off, too pale, eyes edged red from poor sleep. As I watched, the center of the glass began to fog, not slowly from the edges, the way steam creeps up after a hot shower. From the center outward, as if an invisible mouth were pressed flat against the other side of the glass and exhaling. The fog spread in a clean halo, reaching the edges like frost patterns growing at speed. 4 marks appeared in the moisture, long, even fingers pressed from the wrong side, then dragged down with a visible, patient pressure, leaving clear lines in their wake. I stepped back until my spine touched the bath. The cold enamel came through my t-shirt. I left the bathroom, left the flat, put my coat over pajamas, and walked into the street without looking back. I sat in a cafe with the tea I didn't drink and watched strangers do normal, solvent things. One man read the paper with his glasses low on his nose and clicked his tongue at the football results. A woman spread out revision notes and drew fluorescent lines. I wanted to sit in their lives for a while, like a visitor, and then return to mine, repaired. When I went back at noon, the bathroom mirror was clean and dry. The window was closed. The air was ordinary. There was no sign of breath or touch. If I'd invented it, I had done so with impressive clarity. I spent the evening reading about the house out of a mechanical need to find a suitable story to attach to it, a death or a fire or the neat explanation of a tragedy. There wasn't one. Built early last century, subdivided in the 70s, ordinary lives moving through it and out again. No headlines, no neat story to insert as an answer. Sleep became negotiation rather than rest. Any time I began to fall, something jerked me back. At 4, I gave up and sat under a blanket in the living room with the light on, listening to the building breathe and settle. I started to recognize that my fear was a separate presence in the room. It also had weight, and it also moved between chairs. After that night, the activities moved from occasional to daily, and from coy to intimate. Escalation. I found my hairbrush balanced on the top shelf of the fridge next to the milk, the bristles cold. I found my laptop mouse in the bathroom cabinet, centered neatly between paracetamol and plasters. Books stacked in deliberate towers that was steady enough to knock into with a knee and not fall. Each new discovery was small and carefully wrong. The wrongness was the point. The noises changed tone, not louder, but tuned to my name. A voice, like a breath, said it from the other room and stopped when I stood. Scratching started inside a wall and went silent when I touched the paint, as if a hand laid itself flat on the other side. Once I heard glass shatter crisply in the kitchen, that lovely high tinkle of a proper smash, and found nothing disturbed when I walked in. The air still held the echo without the evidence. I moved onto the sofa because the bedroom felt occupied, even when it was empty. The foot of the bed had a cold patch the size of a person's chest that didn't obey the heating. You could place your hand into it like you were testing water. The cold would climb your skin and hang there even after you moved away. I stopped stepping into it. Work slid further towards apology. A publisher, who's always patient, sent a gentle message asking whether everything was all right. I typed and retyped answers that trod near the truth and deleted them, and sent something brief about personal circumstances. I started to refuse invitations and stopped extending any. On a Sunday in late June, the escalation found skin. I was half asleep on the sofa with the telly murmur low just for company, when something gripped my hair at the scalp and pulled. Not a brush catching, not a static drag. Fingers, thumb and forefingers closing, pressing and yanking. My head snapped back. I sat up with a sound that surprised me and felt the sting in the roots like heat. Several hairs wrapped around my fingers when I touched there, and the tiny ache they left behind stayed hot and honest. The room held its shape, air unmoved, the lamp making the same pool on the textured wallpaper. But I could feel the place where a hand had been, as clearly as if someone stood in front of me. Fear changed temperature. For the first time it became anger. It felt like being shoved on the pavement by someone who doesn't even make eye contact. I said something into the room. I won't repeat it. It sounded thin leaving my mouth. I said go. I said enough. I said stop touching me. Silence fell in a way I've never heard at home. The street withdrew. The building closed its throat. No water in any pipe. No electronic hums. It was like being inside a recording booth. The flat held its breath. Then every door in the place slammed at once. Not just the interior doors, cupboards, the bathroom cabinet, the wardrobe. The sound had the clean, wooden crack of proper force and arrived in a single, synchronized clap that went through my chest and left a hollow behind it. The living room door hit so hard the frame shuddered. Dust lifted from the top of the skirting and hung briefly in the lamplight like a glitter that didn't belong there. I ran, keys, phone, out. I didn't lock the door behind me. I ran until my lungs burned in the mild evening and sat on a bench near the park thinking about how the body can shake in places you didn't know it had space to shake in. I didn't go back that night. I rang my sister, and the first word out of my mouth must have been enough, because she told me to come and didn't ask for detail. The next morning, we went together, and I packed clothes and a few essentials with my eyes on the corners of rooms. We left. Plymouth let me sleep the first night, like I'd been benched at last and allowed to rest. My sister asked kind questions in ordinary tones for 3 weeks, and I failed to assemble answers that didn't sound like excuses for losing my grip. The spare room had its own cold spot under the window that we both chalked up to old frames and wind that day, and didn't discuss again. I told myself I was still carrying the fear, heavy and useless, and laying it over every shape like tracing paper. Eventually, the practicalities tapped. I couldn't keep paying rent on a place I wasn't in. I couldn't live indefinitely in the spare room like an open suitcase. I drove back to Exeter on a warm July afternoon that made the city look almost forgiving. I unlocked the flat and paused on the threshold, listening for the weight of a room that's been waiting. It felt neutral, not friendly, not charged, as if something had stepped to the side. I walked through slowly, and the rooms held. The cupboards were shut. No stacks, no condensation, no strange placement of everyday things. I put a bag down and made dinner with quiet hands and ate it at the small table, and every bite tasted like food rather than nerves. That night, I dozed on the sofa under lamplight, sleeping in small climbs and slides. Nothing happened. The silence had an ordinary texture again. False calm, I see that now, but it was a relief that moved like water. Across the next few weeks, the flat behaved like a place learning its manners. A door left ajar here, the heating thumping into life at a time it wasn't set for. Little reminders, nothing aggressive. I began to pretend that the slam had ended something. I even worked with something like my old focus. I started to think about inviting someone over. In August, it returned, altered, less violent, more meticulous, persistent. I woke to find every photograph turned face down. I opened drawers to find my clothes removed, folded neatly on the bed in stacks that remembered color and weight. The books were reorganized by color into a gradient, red through to blue, spines crisp. The effort invisible. It had the neatness of a caretaker who disapproved of how I stored things. Then one morning, the bathroom mirror wore a clear message in fresh condensation. Not handprints, letters. Get out. Plain, clean lines, centered. I stood with a toothbrush in my hand and looked at the instruction like it had come through the post. I wiped it away with the edge of a towel that left a clean arc in the moisture and carried on. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired of being spoken to from the wrong side of things. The messages continued. Not always words. Sometimes a single arrow traced in dust on a bookshelf pointing at nothing. Sometimes objects arranged into shapes on the table that left the meaning just out of reach. Once the cutlery drawer held only knives laid out like instruments, the forks and spoons in a neat pile on the counter, as if someone had given me a choice. The footsteps grew louder, and the coal patches colder, and the sense of being watched moved from moments to a constant presence that sat behind me at the desk like a second chair. I stayed. Every day I didn't leave felt like not giving it the answer it wanted. That might have been bravado or stubbornness, or just a tired mind choosing the simple rule, keep going. I started to think about attachment differently. The flat felt like a stage some days, but other days the sense of it lived nearer my skin. I caught myself pausing on certain floorboards as if I expected another foot to step beside mine. I remembered the 3 weeks in Plymouth, and the spare room's deep chill under the window at 2 a.m, and the faint steps in the corridor I told myself belonged to the house settling. Trailing me wasn't grand. It was just a quiet, constant option available to whatever this was. The thought made ordinary spaces feel like contact points rather than shelters. Last week, looking for a book I'd been meaning to reread for years, I opened a box I'd taped shut before moving in with my sister. On top was a photograph from my previous flat. One of those late evening people glow shots from a dinner I'd hosted. Half a dozen of us in casual clothes, elbow to elbow, laughing at something I can't hear anymore. The kitchen light had thrown a warm band across our faces. Behind us, in the doorway to the hall, the darkness was deeper than it should have been, and inside that dark stood a person-shaped absence, tall, thin, not a smudge of motion, not flash burn, a presence like negative space. I stared at it until my eyes adjusted and the shape remained instead of correcting itself into wallpaper. I went through other photographs from that time, drawn by a need to test whether I was teaching myself to see things that weren't there. It appears again and again, at the edge of frames, half in a reflection, just inside a doorway, as if the camera pulled it slightly closer each time. No face, no features, a silhouette with the scale and alignment of a person. Watching, patient, close enough that I should have felt breath if breath existed for it. I don't know how long it's been with me. Years is a reasonable guess. I don't have a story that pins it neatly to a single door opened or an object bought at a market that used to belong to the wrong person. I've been resisting a story because stories make it sound finished, and this isn't finished. It's a habit. It's a daily practice performed by something I didn't ask for. Right now, as I sit at my desk, the cupboards in the kitchen are opening one by one. The hinges make a specific sound. Soft click up, then the faint sigh as the door moves past equilibrium and swings to its full extent. The sound is clean, repetitive, measured out with a few seconds between each door, as if someone is taking care not to rush. I haven't turned around yet. When I do, they'll be wide like always, and I'll close them like always, because I'm still living here, and that means doing the small chores that come with it. Tomorrow morning, they'll be open again, and I'll go through the same predictable motions. The flat is cold today, the kind of cold that lays a film over the skin and stays put. I can see my breath. It moves in front of my face and then disappears, and in the moment before it fades, I have the precise sensation that something is standing very near, testing the air as I do, inhaling when I exhale, exhaling when I inhale, patient and exact, sharing the room as if it also pays rent. I tell myself, again, that leaving might not help. The photograph insists on that. The spare room in Plymouth insists. I could pack a bag tonight and wake up to the same gentle click of unfamiliar hinges in a different kitchen, the same soft swing of cupboard doors in a new geometry. I could tell myself I've beaten it by refusing to admit it and find the word written on whatever mirror I face in the morning steam, the word we both know. For now, I'm typing, and the keys feel cold, and the flat is listening. False calm, tension, a reveal I keep trying not to name, escalation measured in the ordinary, the drop always the same, a quiet that isn't empty, a breath I can see, and the slow swing of a door I didn't touch.